Everybody, thank you for being here live or watching the replay. We are live right now with Dr. Jerry Bolling. This is an exciting episode of WaterCooler Wednesday because we're going to talk about something that many of you may have never really heard about or talked about before, and might be surprised that there's terminology behind this and this is a thing. Because I would bet that many of you that are in leadership roles have experienced upward bullying, even if you may not have a term for it. And so Jerry is the expert in this area. And so I'm so excited to have him here to talk with us about this. Let me give you a little bit of the official background information on Jerry. So Dr. Bolling is the founder of Bolling Training and Consulting Group, LLC. An overarching goal for Jerry is to help organizations, leaders, and others frame a constructive dialogue necessary to detect and identify, coach and educate, prevent and mitigate, and ultimately suppress the problems of bullying in the workplace. Now, that's the easy part. Here's what's really fascinating about this guy. Jerry's also a native Washingtonian residing in Maryland, right by DC, with his wife and two sons. He retired from the federal government, spending the majority of his 30-year career with the Department of Labor. Dr. Bolling has a diverse background in the financial community, working in accounting, budgeting, contract management, internal control, and other related financial management areas. Dr. Bolling is the owner of Bolling AccuTaxes, a small home-based practice. So he's got two simultaneous careers while calling himself retired. He's currently the treasurer for the Maryland, D.C. Society of Enrolled Agents and the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 12. Dr. Bolling is a federal coach with the Treasury Executive Institute, coaching cadre, earning his coaching credentials from the Federal Internal Coach Training Program through the International Coach Federation. Holy cow, Jerry! That's a bit of a resume.
That sounds like a lot of stuff there, Dave.
Yeah, it does.
I would like to meet that guy.
Pretty amazing. So if you are tuning in right now from LinkedIn, Facebook, we're back up on Twitter, we're on YouTube, any of those locations, please pop in and say hi. Throughout the talk, we keep this interactive, so your questions are welcomed, and comments as well. We'd love to hear your perspective on everything that we talk about. But Jerry, I promised you that we would start with the 6 and 60, which is 6 rapid fire questions. You've got 60 seconds to answer, although in full disclosure, nobody has ever answered all of them in 60 seconds. Okay. But are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Here we go. You ready? All right.
Yes.
Let's get the timer ready. I'll start the first question first because it's a bit of a doozy. So in the past, we've talked about career change with Brittany Eisenman a bit. Making the move from accounting to anti-bully research and training. What's one piece of advice you would have for career changers?
You just have to do it. You have to find what it is that you're passionate about and what speaks to you and what drives you, what makes you happy. Like as they say, anything that you love becomes easy. And
nice.
I love talking to people.
Love that.
Yes.
One notable trait of your favorite boss of all time.
Can I say the person name?
If it's your favorite, sure. You might hurt other people's feelings.
Well, I would say it would be transformation. Transformation. Yes, and I will touch on that a little later, but transformational, that would be the characteristic.
Nice. You claim you're retired. I just shared a segment of your resume. I'm not sure if that's what most people view as retirement, although Michelle Fritsch, a past guest, might approve of that kind of retirement. If you could take a more traditional retirement, and money and time were not considerations, where would you live out the rest of your days? Anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Wow, that's a great question. I because I love the warm climate, I would definitely say somewhere below the equator,
Nice.
probably Australia. I
Ooh,
think that would, yes, yes.
nice. All right. What is one thing you would like to see stick around after this pandemic? One positive change that's come from this.
I think remote teleworking, we have shown that we have the ability to be able to do the work for most white collar career fields, that you could do the work from home and that you don't necessarily need to come into the office, and it able to stabilize that work balance, life work balance for most people, especially those with younger children.
Nice.
So that would be one.
Question five: quickest way to spot a bully, and we're definitely going to circle back to this.
The quickest way to spot a bully is just it's a perception. It's just how you feel about it. You know, it really is how that person makes you feel.
Mm. And final question: I know that along with all of your other work, you like to hit the gym. Um, how important is leg day?
Well, leg day is not that important to me anymore.
Okay.
But
Okay,
I
I
do.
just know that that's a thing. That's a
Well,
real thing. So great job. Thank you for playing 6 in 6 minutes with me, Jerry. That
leg
was
day.
you've got a
That
lot
was
to
awesome.
say.
That was
I,
awesome. Leg
I
day.
love it. So hello, thank you for tuning in. Please say hi in the in whichever chat window is in front of you if you are watching this now. Now, Jerry, I built this up, gave your resume. You came from a world of accounting, a full career in accounting. You still like
Yes.
live in that world very much.
Yes.
But then you came over to the dark side, the evil side, the bullying side, and the soft skills side, training people to reduce bullying in the workplace. Where? How does that connect? We need to know your origin story. How did we get here?
Okay, that's real simple, David. Bullying kind of fell upon me, but how I got there is that I became a manager, a junior manager in '06. And as a junior manager, you know, there is really no cost, and you just kind of they just throw you in.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel like I was truly getting what I needed. My upline managers were not really helping. And I am a person who like to study and learn. And and I thought, well, what's the best way to do this? Go back to school.
Yeah.
And I went to school. But the funny thing was, David, when I registered for doctoral school, I did a knee jerk thing, and it was that I wanted to do a doctor in business administration. When they accepted me, and it was like I opened that acceptance letter and I looked at it, and it was like, oh my goodness, like my whole world just collided. Like I just couldn't see myself continuing down this path, and I told them I didn't want to do it, and they say, well, let's do something else. And I went into leadership. After I read about it, it spoke to me in leadership, and I like I like the studying of people. I like to know what make people tick. So I went down the leadership path, and bullying just kind of fell upon me as I wanted to talk about ineffective leadership, because we had to write about leadership. And I
Mhm.
wanted to talk about ineffective leadership, and my research professor said, well, Jerry, that's a great idea, but tell me, at the end of the day, you're going to need some research. And what manager do you think going to tell you that they're ineffective? And so therefore you're, so I had to pivot and fell upon upward bullying.
Hmm.
So that's the long and short of
And
it.
that's really interesting because I want to circle back and explore that a little bit because well we can sort of answer this now preemptively, but did you find that managers were open with that question, or is there a little bit of that machismo, like that I'm too tough to admit that I'm bullied, or too insecure to admit when I'm being bullied as a manager? Did you run into some
Yes.
stumbling blocks there?
Yes, when I was doing the research for my dissertation, one of the areas that I always found fascinating to me were women. Whenever we would discuss this matter, and the first thing they would sit up prompt, and they would sit up and they, Jerry, nobody, I would never allow my workers to bully me. That would never happen. And then as we started talking about what it looked like, what it felt like, then I would notice that their shoulders were kind of slumped. They would sit back in the chair.
Yeah.
Then the next thing they would just kind of drape over, and you'd just see them like this. And then they'd look at me and say, I'm being bullied. I never thought that would happen. So
So
it
they
was the
never
women.
they didn't know,
Right.
they didn't have enough of a grasp of this concept to
Because it's
know that.
right, because it's unrecognizable
Right.
and it's under research. You don't hear a lot of talk about a manager being bullied in the workplace. It is
Yeah.
unheard of because the power dynamic is always going downward. It's coming from
Yeah.
the manager.
So that's a great thing for us to explore, because that's what we're partially here for today, which is to answer that question: what
Yes.
is upward bullying? Because of that exact for that exact reason, many of our viewers may be experiencing this, or may have experienced it in the past, maybe involved in it from whichever direction, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they may be the bully or the bullier or the bullied. But I think we really need to define it. But before we do, I want to say hi to Vian. Joseph Hobson says, "What's up, bro?" Juanita says hello from LinkedIn. Dion says hi, and Izzy, thanks
Hello
so
to
much for
everyone.
tuning in.
And
So,
for the close, Joseph Hobson is my brother.
oh, there you go. well, well,
Hey,
thanks
Joe.
for tuning in. I guess he doesn't have a choice. Uh, so tell us, what is upward bullying?
So, simply put, upward bullying is the reversal of downward bullying, as I said earlier, where downward bullying is when the manager or supervisor intimidates, harass, or aggressive towards their staff member. Upward bullying is definitely different than horizontal or lateral bullying, which is bullying that takes place between members who are equal in standing in the workplace, where there might be just a slight uh, informal power imbalance between the two. And when I say that, you think of seniority in the workplace or relationship with senior execs. But however, upward bullying is when a manager or supervisor becomes the target of unpleasant and degrading attacks from their staff members. And these bullied managers, it for them it could cause psychological stress, depression, anxiety, and even lose confidence in their ability to do their work. And an unfortunate result of upward bullying is the erosion of the targeted manager to lead or manage his staff, with the emergence of productivity and performance issues decreasing, and chronic stress for everyone that's caught into this paradigm of upward bullying. So it also, and another thing about upward bullying is a challenge is that for a lot of the managers, they will not come forward because they fear being perceived as a failure
Mm-hmm.
or a liability to the organization, or labeled as a weak or ineffective manager to their staff, fellow colleagues, or even more importantly, to their upper level management.
This
And it's,
so I think that's so interesting, because it's not just that we can't identify it, but I would assume that there's always shame involved in being bullied. Not that I've ever experienced bullying ever. Okay, maybe a little bit. But definitely in my adult career, horizontal bullying, I was definitely a victim of that at one point.
right.
And then grade school, that was just a mess. Um, but I see how shame would play into any kind of bullying. But especially as a manager, I've got to think it's my fault, or I
Right.
because I think of myself as having the power. How can I be bullied if I'm the one with the power? And I want you to address that. But before you do, anybody watching right now or in the replay, I want you to put in the chat, have you ever been bullied before in any context? This could be upward bullying or any type of bullying. And if so, did you tell anybody about it? Did you report the bullying? I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether you reported it, why you did or why you didn't, whether there was shame involved in that. And Jerry, if you could speak to that a bit in terms of upward bullying and the shame involved in that.
Right. I mean, when you think about it, David, like you said, as a manager, you would never think that you would be bullied. So, but, and for that manager, like I said, the research shows that they will not come forward and say that they were bullied because, like you mentioned, the shame that is involved in it. I mean, how can you be a true leader if you cannot handle this one individual? If you cannot handle Jerry, who is making your life difficult, Jerry, who is bullying you and bullying, and I'd like to give you some components of what that looks like, because what it looks like, it is when the employee willfully neglects to hand in assignments, to pass on information to the manager, where, say, as a new leader, you come into the organization, and David, you to yourself, you're saying, well, I should have had that job. I should have received that promotion. I was next in line. How in the world they bring this bozo into this
Mm-hmm.
job? You I know this job better than him. And you know that the monthly reports are due on the close of the fifth business day at the end of every month. But Jerry doesn't know that as the new manager. So you withhold that information. And now when the reports do not go out, now I look kind of foolish that I don't know what I'm doing. And so now I have to report this out to my manager. And they're looking at me, well, why didn't you know?
Mm-hmm.
You have this extensive accounting background. Didn't they have the work the reports due by this particular time of the month? And so there you have it.
Yeah. So which brings up a lot of additional points, which I want to get to. But Stephen asked a question. He said, if a manager gets bullied, maybe they don't have the proper skills and leadership to be a manager. So we know that there's shame involved. But
Yeah.
I guess Stephen's asking, is that well placed? Is that legitimate
And
criticism?
Stephen is absolutely correct there, because as I alluded to in the opening, David, how I got on this track as a junior manager, again, I wasn't given the proper skill set to manage. They send you to class, but really, the class is only so good if you're unable to practice. And the one thing that the class doesn't teach you is how to handle hostile situations.
Yeah.
And that's really what you find yourself when you're being bullied. You don't have the skill sets to be able to deal with that individual, and your manager will oftentimes leave you out there to dry. And quite frankly, they might not even have the
Mm-hmm.
proper skill set in how to deal with an aggressive employee. Everyone isn't built to be able to handle that individual.
Yeah, and it's seldom that I walk into an organization where I don't find somebody who, um, has some level of power within the organization where leadership is not thrilled with this person's toxic behaviors or attitudes, but they keep them around because they're so valuable in other ways or because
Right,
they
right,
hold different types of power. I would assume the
right,
same would be with direct bullying,
right,
upward
right.
bullying. Now,
And
yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
So we just had Vicky just posted. Some managers want to control every aspect of your life, and if they are good to you, they think they are allowed to bully. So Vicky's bringing up the traditional sense of bullying, where we're bullied by our manager,
Right.
and maybe I'll piggyback on Vicky for a second and say, is this even an appropriate conversation to have in a day where so many people feel victimized and bullied by their managers? Why is it important for us to have conversations and recognize that managers are bullied too? That it goes two different ways.
Well, the reason why it's important is because, one, for the health of the organization. And what that means is, David, when everyone is, when you're in a bullied situation, and we can put it in simple terms, you think about it, when you're bullied, you're kind of distracted from the work because one, you're just trying to survive the day. That's your main
Yeah.
focus. Am I going to be bullied today? And who wants to walk around and feel that? And then it's the, like I say, it's the health of the organization, turnover, whether it's upward bullying or downward bullying, bullying across the line hurts an organization
Hmm.
because you have again the erosion of the morale. You have individual who take off and use burn and leave because they don't want to come to work and face the bully, and ultimately it hurts the bottom line, the productivity. And when your productivity is low, and if you are a bottom line organization, where might not necessarily mean as much in the government world, but for profit. Imagine you at Amazon and your workforce doesn't want to come to work. They don't come to work. That
Yeah.
affects the bottom line. This is why it is important to address this.
And if yeah, I suppose if I'm being that model employee, which I'm not claiming that I've ever been, but if I there's a reason I'm self-employed now. But if I am the sort of model employee, and there's somebody that I work with who is aggressively or not, but bullying the manager, they're probably going to get more because they're manipulating the heck out of this manager, and the manager's scared to take action with them and feels bullied. So in a way, it does negatively impact me, right?
Yes, yes, it does. Because with bullying, there are three components to bullying.
Yeah.
You have the targeted individual, and then you have the accuser, and then you have the bystander.
Mm.
So for that, it's a three prong. Like I said, everyone is affected. Um, it's just a downward spiral from that point on. Again, David, I can't stress this enough. Coming to work, as you, who wants to come to work, and they are being bullied, no matter what. Again, whether it's going upward or downward, you
Yeah.
just don't want to be there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, your brother Joseph, he's saying that you helped him a ton as you were working on your doctorate. Maybe that helped guide your doctorate, and he said he was going through it, and you were
Yes,
able to help him. So
yes,
I don't know if Joseph's trying to take credit for this career path or what, but he's definitely making his voice heard. That
yes. He is definitely taking credit for it. He is my biggest champion, and I'm so happy he's in my corner.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we have a question on LinkedIn from Juanita. The question is, do you think that managers who are new to a company are an easier target to bully?
Not necessarily. It depends on the individual. I mean, bullying is so personal because, again, as I illustrate, you can have a new manager come in, but that manager is well respected.
Mhm.
Now, if that manager isn't respected, then that's when the possibility that bullying can seep in. And that's what it is. It is perceptional. It is about how I feel about you, or it's hard to say. It doesn't have to be because you're new, but in some instances, it is because you're new,
Mhm.
and it's hard to say. It could go either way. It's it's. I just really couldn't give you
Right.
a definitive answer on that one, Juanita, but it could be. Let's go
Yeah.
with that. That's a great answer. It could be.
The HR answer would be it depends.
Yes,
So,
yes,
but I do
yes.
know that in my personal work experience, I came into an organization at the management level and did not have any direct um, uh, prior experience within that industry. And this organization tended to promote people from within. So I faced a steady, um, at the time I called it hazing, but I had to prove my worth. And there was legitimate bullying when I look back at it, for maybe 4 to 6 months before I was put through this process where I had to earn the respect from everybody. So
Hmm.
is there sort of a shortcut to earning the respect, or is that even should that even be part of the conversation when one is bullied?
Yes, I mean because a lot of times, David, bullying occurs because of change, and the change could be from the organizational standpoint. It could be a change in management, where there's a new manager. It could be a change in the processing. Like for now, we're in a remote, so that changed the processing, changing the working condition, that you lost your working space because you're now working at home and you're crowded. It could be managers' competency is questioned, their leadership is questioned, or that you recognize that their upper level manager does not support them. And
Mm,
so, and that in itself, it is, you're caught in a management squeeze, so to
yeah.
speak. And that's one of the things that Joe and I talked about a lot
So,
because,
so Jerry,
as
if I could
yes.
interrupt for just 1 second because we need to hear this, but how on track are you with your brother? You're not seeing these comments come up, but your brother literally just posted: "Is it possible that upper management can use employees' complaints, unfounded or otherwise, to bully mid-level managers?" He asked that question right as you started talking about this squeeze. So I think
See,
I think you guys are definitely on the same page. That's
yes,
impressive.
we have been together for so long that we know each other. Thought, and that is what Joe was talking about. For that is when you're caught in a management squeeze,
Yeah.
where you're being squeezed from your upper level manager, and between you and your subordinate. I often say the hardest job, and I don't care what it is, David. Any organization, you could be working at McDonald's or you could be working for Tesla. The hardest job is junior management. And when you're caught, that's that management squeeze, when you're caught between staff and your upper level manager. And if your staff member, say, has a relationship, and it doesn't have to be a man woman relationship, but just a relationship. It could be that they could be church friends, neighbors, they went to school together. But David, you have, say, David, I'm your manager, but Joe is my manager. You know, if you and Joe are fishing buddies, you have Joe's ear.
Mhm.
So you're able to tell Joe on a fishing trip that Jerry's a bozo. I don't really think he know what he's doing. So now that is sowing, doubt into Joe. So now Joe is looking at Jerry like, well, David said he's a bozo. And every time Jerry says something, maybe I don't enunciate my words properly. Maybe I stutter. And so now Joe was thinking, okay, David is right. This guy is really a bozo. I really need to get rid of him. And now that's where it becomes is very difficult. And that's where you look at upward bullying, because now, David, what happened, you effectively went over my head to my manager. And now you're using my manager as a way to bully me. And so, and Joe is right. And at that point, your upper level management is now really coming down hard on you because of what your staff has shared with them.
Right, right. So now we have this comment or question. How do you navigate being bullied by clients when a manager is bullied by external clients? That's another avenue of bullying where power is sort of off balance. Um, what do you do in a situation like that? How do you
Yeah,
so specifically the question is, how do you navigate this, as many companies believe that the customer is always right?
and we know the customer is not always
Hmm.
right, and that is a case by case situation. As you just said, the correct answer, the HR answer,
Yeah.
is it depends,
Hmm.
and it really does, because no two situations are alike. So if you have a customer that is bullying you, then the best thing to do is to talk to your manager and create a strategy with your manager and how to solve that issue. I guess I would need to know a little more detail about that to see how that pans out. But I would say the best way to navigate through any situation is always to start with your manager.
Mhm.
That is the best way.
So if I am a manager and I am being bullied, what do I do about it? I've got some shame tied up in it. I'm feeling lost. I feel very alone, like you said, especially with the squeeze. You know that how lonely junior management can be. Um, so what do I do?
Well, again, the best thing is to have a conversation, and that conversation, one, you definitely have to have a conversation with the staff member, and you have to be, say, tough, to put on your big boy or big girl, pull up your
Mm,
pants, and have this conversation. Then the next thing is to have a conversation with your superior. You need to have a conversation with HR. And if necessary, you have a conversation if there's a union involved, the union officials.
mhm.
But you have to have a conversation and you have to let them know that this type of bullying is not even necessarily bullying, but behavior. This unwanted and unwarranted behavior that is taking place in the workplace, you're not going to have it, and you have to be firm about it, and
Yeah.
that's where it starts.
And when you say first talk to the bully, is
Right.
that chronologically? Is that what you should be doing? First talk to them and only escalate it to these other levels if you can't come to an understanding with them?
Yes, and the reason why, because sometimes a person don't necessarily know that they're doing it. Again, you know, again, each situation is different. Now, there are some people who deliberately come out of their house and they come to attack.
Hmm.
That's what they live for. There are some people, but everybody is not a bad actor. So for that person, again, David, as I use you and I as an example, and I am the subordinate to you, and you feel that, well, Jerry, his behavior all of a sudden has changed. Well, that's the first thing that you recognize.
Hmm.
Because all of a sudden, Jerry is unresponsive. If I ask him to do something, he doesn't do it. He doesn't turn his work in. Well, maybe there's an issue. So just have a conversation and hey, Jerry, I noticed that your work has fell off, and that you don't come into work on time, and maybe your dress, you change the dress. I noticed something is going on. Can you come in my office? Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about what's going on. And you might find out that just talking to Jerry, that Jerry has been diagnosed with cancer, or whatever it is, or maybe, my wife left me, or
Hmm.
my dog died. It could be anything.
Right.
So, but again, it's a change. And as a manager, and even much so, and I could use the analogy as a parent, you recognize there's a change in your child. And
Yeah.
at that point, what do? You have to have a conversation. And it's just that simple. And if you can't resolve it, then that's when you escalate it,
Yeah.
to the higher
Yeah.
level manager. But it definitely, the conversation definitely starts with you and that employee.
Yeah, I could use that advice when it comes to with your child. I actually immediately escalate it to the boss. I tell my wife there's been a change. Could you deal with this? But maybe I should tackle it with my kid first. That's a good lesson learned. So, what about from an organizational perspective? So, let's say we learn that this is happening more than we may have known within our organization. Are there certain things, first of all, that an organization does that could be contributing to this, building this culture of upward bullying? And if so, and even if not, are there things that the organization can do to reduce or eliminate it?
Yeah, it's definitely things that the organization does, because for some organizations they do pit management and staff against one another. It's something about that, like that gladiator sport that is
Right.
us against them. And so, and when you find yourself in a situation like that, those are what we call toxic work environments.
Yeah.
And I left an organization, the federal government, which is a very toxic organization. As you look on the news, you can turn on the news right now, and any news channel right now, you will see evidence of a toxic workplace. You
Yeah.
have right now that, hey, there are subpoenas going left and right for people to come out and talk about January 6th, and there's pushback. That is a form of bullying.
Right.
You know, who in there right when I was growing up, if Congress gave you a subpoena, you had to go. But
Mhm.
now, because it is a badge of honor to push back, and that is upward bullying.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Yeah, and so much of it comes probably to our misunderstanding of power, right?
Yes.
I do want to say before you touch on that, I do want to say that the opinions of my guests do not necessarily represent the water cooler or
Yeah.
Illuminate
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
David Shar. I love the federal government. I would never
Yes.
call it toxic. But please leave me alone. So just wanted to get that out there, bad mouthing the federal government. So,
No, it's I'm not
no, I get
I'm
your
not
point.
bad mouthing the government
No, I
by
know.
no means.
I'm teasing.
But I do
So
understand what you're saying, David.
so
Yes.
so when you talk about power though, is that the essence of it? Is that well, first of all, I'd like to hit on this first. Because you talked about toxic work environments, and from my experience, when a work environment is toxic, it's really hard to point to one specific issue. Does upward bullying correlate with downward bullying? In other words, do some environments just have more bullying, or do you find that where there's upward bullying, there's not necessarily downward bullying, or they exist in different types of organizations? How related are the two?
The two are very related, and it doesn't necessarily mean that one environment is better than the next environment.
Hmm.
It's wherever people are,
Yeah.
because again, we are humans, and sometimes, David, let's just call a spade a spade. Sometimes we as people do not get along with one another.
Hmm.
And that is the recipe for a toxic environment.
Yeah.
The fact that you do not get along with one another. And once I establish that I do not like David, and therefore I'm not going to help David no matter what it is, whether you're my manager or I am your manager. I don't like you. And that has been established. And from that point on, we can never work in a manner that is suitable for the workplace. We
Hmm.
have now established behaviors that are detrimental to the organization because you and I cannot get along. So it's not necessarily that uh, the Acme company is better than the Beta company.
Hmm.
It's not like that. It's about the individuals that work inside the Acme company, that work inside the Beta company.
Yeah.
How do we get along? And a lot of that, David, it has to do with the top layer. What does the top layer do? And
Hmm.
if the top layer has it as a gladiator sport,
Right.
then that's what it is. But if the top layer, for instance, I read a lot that Google is like one of the top places to work because they treat their employees with respect.
Hmm.
They treat them like they are human beings, like worthy of their respect and worthy for them to be working here at this great organization. But then again, like I said, you have some organizations where it's a gladiator sport, and that is the difference between the two cultures, whether it's a functional culture or a toxic culture. It is who is at the top. How do they rule this universe that we're working in?
So I'm a big proponent of empowering your employees, right? And work engagement. Uh, so you just talked about Google and how they treat their employees, and seem to value their employees right, does that potentially create an environment for upward bullying? In other words, if I'm empowering my people, then now I'm giving them power to yield as they will. Is that an unfortunate a potential byproduct? Or am I thinking too much into this?
David, I think you're thinking too much into it because think about it. If you're working, if I am your supervisor, David, and I'm giving you the credence and the ability to be creative, to be able to think outside of the box, to use a phrase, and you're able to flourish. What
Yeah.
does that do? That then elevates you in the eyes of me, and I then elevates you to the eyes of my manager, and we both grow because now we are both contributing to the organization, because that's what we're here for, to contribute to the organization. So not necessarily now, but if I am a narrow-minded manager and I see David has bright ideas, then I could definitely see where I would start suppressing your ideas, because because I don't know how to manage you and how to live with you and let you shine as an employee. And that's where a lot of the power imbalance comes, because we think we own this. And Joe can attest, we often talk about how certain organizations think they own the process. You don't own it. You just work here. You
Yeah.
know, you are just a manager right now. That's it. That's all. And you're here to do a job. And one of the jobs as a manager is to, one, elevate your staff.
Mhm.
And that's what it is. You elevate the staff, and you just help the organization prosper.
So empowering your employees would actually potentially lower upward bullying. It's I guess when people feel restricted and they
Right.
don't feel powerful,
Right.
that they end up pushing back
So
and
think
challenging their manager.
so think of it like this, David. Do you like to be micromanaged? Have you ever thought that you like to be micromanaged, maybe other than being married, and that's just a joke.
Yeah, I do not like to be micromanaged.
Exactly. So, but when you're given the freedom to express your creativity, then you flourish.
Mhm.
And with that, if you have this ability to be free with your work, and to contribute, and you know that your work is being received in a manner that is engaging for you, there's a less possibility. Why would you bully Jerry if Jerry is saying, "Hey, David, to stretch"? Imagine what your life could be. For instance, you asked earlier about a characteristic of a great supervisor, or my
Mhm.
favorite supervisor. My favorite supervisor, Jerome, he allowed me to stretch and become Dr. Bolling, because I wasn't always Dr. Bolling, but under his watch, I earned my doctorate. Under his watch, I was able to go on three details. One detail, I went to OPM for 6 months. Who does that? And this is in the federal government.
Yeah.
So he allowed me to stretch and reimagine who Jerry wanted to become. And there's no way I would have ever bullied him.
Yeah.
There's no way. Why would I do that? Why would I bite the hand that
Right.
feed
Right.
me?
I guess the way you're describing this and these interactions, I would think that a place where that would be primed for upward bullying would be where upper management is telling employees that they're wonderful and empowering them, and then you have these insecure managers underneath them, and then bullying those managers because you're being empowered from upper management and restricted from your direct supervisor. Maybe that would be more of a
And,
recipe for it.
and that's again, David. That's when the power imbalance come in.
Right.
Because if I feel that you are hampering my progress in any
Mm.
way, then I have a problem with that.
Right.
And then how does that problem manifest itself?
Right.
Well, we're not in school, so I truly just can't hit you, because Jerry has children in college, so I need to be able to pay college private school. I like eating. I like dressing. I like the roof. So I just can't hit you.
Yeah.
So what other ways are there can you manifest this? And this is to just show some type of disrespectful behavior that is inappropriate in the workplace.
Yeah.
And you just kind of become withdrawn. Uh, you deliberately do not share information
Hmm.
because David, if you don't want me to shine, then guess what?
Right.
I'm not going to allow you to shine either.
Right, right.
As, as you,
And we talk a lot about these aggressive sort of like when we think about bullying, we think maybe, or I think about aggression, but I would think that from what I've seen, passive aggressiveness within the workplace is incredibly toxic because if you engage, then you're part of it and you look like the bad guy. If you don't engage, then it just continues, and I could see that really creates toxicity. Steven said that he just remembered that he once worked for a company where the senior manager was bullied, and went on to say that the manager's excuse for allowing it was pure procrastination. And Steven, I'd love to hear if you believed that was the actual reason. He said they didn't want to deal with having to find a replacement for the person.
yeah, and that happens because you can you can have someone can have so much institutional knowledge of the organization.
Yeah,
You know, one of my favorite shows, The Office, and you think about Michael. If anyone knows that
yeah.
the NBC show, The Office, Michael
I've got
character.
my white bobblehead right on my shelf.
Right. Yeah, so Michael's character was inept as a manager.
Hmm.
He was lovable, but he was
Yeah,
inept. But no one wanted to bring anyone else in. And I don't know if it was because of the show, but that's the way it was done, kind of to Steven's point. So
hmm,
yes, it happens, and the senior level manager can be bullied too because again, if there's no respect for that individual, you know, that's when the bullying takes place.
yeah,
It is it again is how I feel about you.
yeah. Right, right. And I think there's so much that interacts with that within the culture of the organization, and like you were saying, with how much you don't empower your employees, and it's such a complex issue that it thinks that we're running out of time here because there's still so many questions. But I want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to provide your final thoughts on this. What do we need to know, and what should we be doing about this? And then obviously to leave us with some homework,
Oh,
something
okay,
that we can
great.
all work on.
Well, one thing I do want to touch on that we didn't talk
Yeah.
about, and that is the difference between bullying and harassment.
Mm.
Because in the workplace, bullying and harassment has become an interconnected verb, so to speak.
Yeah.
That once you hear it, you think of it, but there's a difference, and that difference between the two is really about laws. Where harassment has laws that are associated with it because harassment is a form of employment discrimination,
Hmm.
and it is part of the Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Americans with Disability Act of 1967, and the I'm sorry, I'd say that out the Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1967 and the Americans with Disability Act of 1990. And what that covers is harassment is based on age, color, disability, national origin, race, religion, and sex.
Hmm.
So, and that is what the difference is. It is about laws. But understand this, David, in the United States right now, we currently do not have any laws that protect the American workforces from the abuses of bullying. And
Hmm.
you and I had, we had this discussion before, and I find that this is amazing because just about every abuse that you could think of in America is frowned upon and sometimes even criminally adjudicated, from abuses of animals, children, spousal, and I can give you some examples of ex-NFL quarterback Michael Vick, who lost his job and went to jail for animal abuses. Jerry Sandusky, who was a coach at Penn State, lost his job and went to prison for child abuse. Urban Meyer was forced to retire from Ohio State for not taking a swift enough action against his coaches. One coach for spousal abuse. But although there is little that can be done about bullying beyond doing your best to ignore the bully, I recommend anyone bullied or harassed in the workplace to report this behavior to the proper authority and document the instances of bullying so that they can take legal actions down the road if necessary. But you still have to remember, bullying must fall under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 because it has to fall under that harassment category, as I stated, which is age, color, disability, national origin, race, religion, and sex, in order for it to be seen as bullied and to be able to seek justice in the workplace.
Yeah, that is a great point. That is a great point. Now, what homework do you have for us? What can we go home and or back to our workplaces and do to help eliminate this problem?
That's a great question, David. That's right up my alley because as a child, I was the person that always told the teacher, "You forgot to give us homework," and I loved homework as a kid. But
Right. And by the way, to all the viewers, when Jerry told me that he was the kid in the class who would ask for homework when the teacher did not assign homework, it immediately clicked for me. Oh, okay. Now I understand how you got to be the bully expert. That's
yes, I was bullied as a child. but I do know homework. The homework that I want to give is very simple, David, and it is something that I believe that we all do in some form, fashion, or manner, and that is talk. And that's right, TALK, talk. And what do I mean by that, David? What I mean is that for your listeners, that I want them to talk with a driven purpose, and that is to tell, teach, or inform others of their message. A, ask additional questions to gain clarity and understanding during the conversation. L, listen to learn, which I believe this is a crucial part of any conversation, listening to learn. And then finally, K, know and understand what the next steps are, if any. So, David, that's the homework assignment. That is tell, ask, listen, know, talk.
I love that. So this is really how we avoid these contentious sorts of relationships where we're actually understanding each other and talking with a purpose. I love that. Now,
Yes.
If you are looking to get in touch with Dr. Jerry, then you've got to lift your phone up here and open up your camera. And if you hover that right over his QR code, I think that'll take you to a couple links of his. Please connect. If you feel like there is upward bullying or any sort of bullying or harassment occurring within your organization, this is the man to talk to. So I hope that you will reach out and connect. Jerry, this has been an amazing talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
There's
Thank
a
you.
lot of people saying thank you. Your brother said, "Great job, fellas." So that's awesome. And so we really appreciate you coming out and being on the water cooler today. And I hope everybody, if you're watching the replay, will continue to comment, ask questions, because I know that there were even questions in the live session that we didn't get to. So we'll be monitoring those and trying to answer those questions.
Hey,
Yes.
David, before you close out, can I just share one thing?
Yes, please.
I just want your viewers to know what a wonderful guy you are.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. As I'm finding my way through this space as a newly retiree. I met David. We did a presentation for the Maryland Sherm.
Mhm.
We switched spots. David needed someone to switch spots with him, and
Yes.
I obliged, and I sat in on David's class, a kinder kind of workplace,
Mhm.
which was an alignment of kind of what I talk about at the other extreme of the workplace of bullying. And so David and I met, had lunch, and we discussed how we could work together. And now I'm sitting here on his podcast, and I thank you for this opportunity, David. You are definitely a leader in your field, and see, and this is what I'm talking about: having leaders that are willing to let their employees. Although I am not your employee, but it's still it is the same. It's still the same characteristic of having your employee be able to stretch and do other things and allow them that opportunity. And this is what makes a great supervisor, and this is what prevents bullying in the workplace. To help
Wow,
someone
that is
do
great. I
that.
didn't even ask him to say that. Thank you for that. And in fact, in that talk, I mentioned Jerry's talk, Upward Bullying. I didn't know Jerry at the time, but I mentioned it because it was blowing up in the chat aspect of the Maryland Sherm conference, and so I brought it up in terms of talking about building a kinder kind of workplace and toxicity within the workplace. And afterwards, Jerry came up and thanked me for giving him the shout out. I'm like, who are you? And so it turned out this is the guy. I didn't even know he was in the room. So that was really cool. So I'm glad that we were able to build a relationship from there. And I'm excited to see all of the different type of work that we are able to do with
Yes.
each other. So thank you so much, Jerry.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you all for
Thank you.
tuning in, either in the live or the replay. Do your homework. Go talk to somebody, and let us know how that goes. We hope to see you next week, same time, same channel, every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. That's where you can find us at the Water Cooler. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.